Okay, indicated airspeed. TAS, IAS, TAS indicator. The IAS, TAS gauge indicates the aircraft's true airspeed, TAS, in the interior of the gauge, and indicated airspeed in the outer portion of the gauge. The speed scale ranges from 0 to 1,100 kilometers per hour. And these notes I pulled off of Wikipedia. The true airspeed, TAS, also knots true TAS, or KTAS, for knots true airspeed, of an aircraft is the speed of the aircraft relative to the air mass in which it is flying. The TAS meter is necessary for navigation purposes at cruising altitude in less dense air. IAS is the airspeed read directly from the airspeed indicator as driven by the pitot static system. Since the airspeed indicator cannot know density, it is by design calibrated to assume sea level standard atmospheric density when calculating airspeed. The actual density will vary considerably from this assumed value as the aircraft changes altitude. Therefore, IAS will vary considerably from TAS. And I have the Flaming Cliffs module. So I inserted a little paragraph from that into this manual, which better describes the relationship between IAS and TAS, indicated airspeed and true airspeed. Indicated airspeed and true airspeed. As a rule, when flight altitude decreases, the air density increases. The denser atmosphere contributes to a greater lift force, but the drag component increases as well. The thinner air at high altitudes reduces aircraft lift, but drag will decrease. This contributes to higher airspeeds at high altitude. An aircraft traveling at 700 kilometers per hour possesses different flight characteristics when flying at 1,000 kilometers per hour. The actual speed at which aircraft flies through the air mass is called the true airspeed. TAS. TAS automatically compensates for air pressure and density related to TAS. Ground speed is the aircraft's actual speed across the earth. It equals the TAS plus or minus the wind factor. So, as you can see, we are flying at about 600 knots TAS. This is our ground speed plus or minus the wind factor. Most modern aircraft have airspeed indicators that take into account air density and humidity changes at different altitudes. When these changes are not taken into account, the aircraft velocity is called indicated airspeed, IAS. For the pilot, the IAS is the basis for defining maneuvering capabilities of an aircraft. It is usually displayed on the HUD and on the dash. So as you can see, our IAS is 410 kilometers per hour, as shown on the HUD and on the outer perimeter of the airspeed indicator. So I'm going to put this away, and I'm going to increase our speed to about 96%. Make it 97%. Because we're falling behind our Aeroflot 102 Heavy. I kind of like staying with him. Cool visual effect. And Lieutenant Bach, still with me. I wish you could call them and ask them like their status, like their fuel status, weapon status, aircraft status, such as that. So that covers the interrelationship between indicated airspeed and true airspeed. And even myself, I had confusion for some time over the difference. And I've learned the difference pretty much from DCS World. So that's pretty cool. So let's continue on with our basic aircraft instruments. Configuration indicator. The configuration indicator for mechanical devices shows the position of the landing gear, flaps, and air brakes. If the landing gear is not successfully extended or retracted, a red lamp lights in the center of the indicator. Right there. The white lamp in the center will turn red. Cool. Next page. Angle of attack indicator and accelerometer. The angle of attack indicator and accelerometer displays the current angle of attack and G-load. The left part of the indicator shows the angle of attack in degrees, while the G-load is shown in the right part. And note, when on the ground, the audible warning reset can be used to inhibit audible stall warning. Sometimes sitting on the ground, the wind will blow the angle of attack vane into a condition such as the airplane thinks that it's in a stall condition, because on this airplane it's not inhibited, and it gives you the annoying audible stall warning annunciation. Well, you can silence that with the audible warning reset function. And there it is. Cool. Attitude direction indicator. The attitude or direction indicator, ADI, shows the current angles of pitch and aircraft roll. Basically, as you can see, in the lower part of the indicator is a slip indicator. Changing the rudder position eliminates slipping, so try to have the indicator in the central position. So as you can see, I can kind of make the ball do crazy things, along with my aircraft. Wow. I hope this thing settles down a little bit before I start getting seasick. Wow. Okay, come on. I think the autopilot is finally getting it. Okay. We'll not do that again. On the front, pushing the indicator are the required bank and pitch indications to reach the next waypoint. When both bars are in the central position, the aircraft is following the correct course. During landings, the W-shaped glide slope deviation indicator provides instrument landing system ILS detection. I don't think it does that on this aircraft. I've never seen it do that. And then caution. Allow gyros 3 minutes to warm up time before moving aircraft. Failure to do so may damage gyros. But let's go over this. And this is another confusing point that I have for a little bit of time. I'll go to the next page. The required heading needle, as you see in the diagram, that is a direction to your next waypoint. In our case, waypoint 4. The pitch angle is basically the tape. It is your artificial horizon, so to speak, of your pitch. the required bank needle. That's the yellow needle in the center. It is the required bank that you would need to take to get back on your flight plan route. In other words, imagine that as the pencil line between, in our case, waypoint 3 and waypoint 4. So if we go to that map, so this line that goes from waypoint 3 down to waypoint 4, that line is called the course line. And let's say that we're over here. The required bank needle is not going to take you to the waypoint 4 in our case. It's going to try to take you back to this course line and put you back on your planned waypoint course line, the pencil line between waypoint 3 and waypoint 4. And that's the difference that has caused, I think, many people, including myself, confusion until you finally work it out in your mind. But that is an important point to remember. When they're talking about your course, they're talking about this specific line in between your waypoints. The waypoint in itself is a separate entity than your course line. So just think of it two things. There's two things. There's your course line and there's your waypoint, and they are not the same. Okay. So to demonstrate this, let's go back and I will demonstrate this on the ADI. I'm going to fly to the left of my waypoint. Now you do see that the waypoint needle, which is the upper needle with the round little dots, the small white upper needle, and that is called the required heading needle, not the required bank needle. So the required bank needle is well off to my right, and the required heading needle is way off to my right, and the required bank needle is way off to my right. Now watch what happens as you see the aircraft is telling me I am banking as the required bank needle is now centered. It's telling me I'm banking as I should be to get back on my course line. And then you see the required heading needle come into view. But now, as you see, I'm pointed, the nose of the aircraft is pointed to my waypoint, as you can see with the required heading needle, but I am still to the left of my course line. So the required heading needle is pointed at the next waypoint, but the required bank needle wants me to put myself back on that course line between waypoint 4 and waypoint 5. So if I go, now that you see the required heading needle is to the left, that's because my waypoint is over to the left. But my heading, that imaginary or that pencil line on the map between waypoint 4 and 5 is still to my right. And what the flight control computer is trying to do is to get me to intercept that line and get back on the course that the flight control computer knows that I should be on. And in this case, it's quite a bit of difference between the two. Now if I fly a heading that's kind of like in between them, so that the required bank needle is to the right and the required heading needle is to the left, I'll intersect that line. And as you can see, I'm already starting to intersect that line. And now it's having me to go, because I've passed that line, I'm now to the right of that imaginary line, or actually a physical pencil line on a map. And I went past it, so now the required bank needle is trying to get me to on that line. Now once I get back on that line and intersect that line, you'll see that the required heading needle, as I come back around, now you can see I'm fine tuning it because I need less bank, and you see the required heading needle is centering up. So now, according to the ADI, since it's fairly much centered now, I am on course line between waypoints 4 and 5. And I'm also directly pointed at waypoint 5. Now the pitch, the required altitude needle and the required pitch needle work exactly the same, but in the vertical sense. So they're both telling me I'm above my altitude. My required pitch or pinch for the next waypoint is below me, and the flight control computer wants me to put the nose down to intercept that planned altitude route.